I want to talk about circular saws and table saws and sort of talk through why you would want one over the other. You know, what are the advantages and the disadvantages? And also, we've written articles and we have videos on how to use them, so I'm not going to discuss that in any detail in this video. We also have recommendations on, a good inexpensive table saw to consider, a list of them, and also what kind of circular saw should I buy. The very key difference between a table saw and a circular saw is, in a table saw, you bring the thing to be cut to the saw. In a circular saw, you take the saw to the thing that you're going to cut. So this is much more portable, and you can take it with you to the job site, and you don't have to bring it back to the table saw. Now, with every advantage, generally in life, comes a disadvantage. So the table saw, it has the advantage, it's not very portable, that's a disadvantage, but the advantage is it's extremely accurate. And by the way, it's quite safe compared to hand holding the circular saw. So it is accurate and safe. The circular saw, it's very flexible because you can take it where you want it to be, want the cut to be made. The disadvantages are, number one, it doesn't make a terribly accurate cut. It varies in its kerf some, so that the edge of the cut is a little bit ragged. And it's also a little less safe because you've got your hands involved and it can get twisted in the work and kick back on you, or you could get your hand into the blade, although you can do that on a table saw as well. So again, a circular saw you take to the job, and a table saw you bring the job to the saw. Now let's just talk through a little bit of the basic parts of this circular saw. Obviously it has a little motor here, and it has a handle, and it's nice that the handle has a pistol grip for your right hand. The makers of this assume you're right-handed. And then you have a grip for your left hand so that you can hold it solidly. And then you go across the work like this. And as you go, there is a blade guard here that covers the blade. So the blade is spinning, it makes it less likely that you're going to get your hand into the blade. As you push the blade into the wood actually rotates this blade cover out of the way and exposes the blade to the cut, and then when you're done, it snaps back. So that's a safety feature. It also has this flat base, which is in normal configuration set to be perpendicular to the blade, so that when you cut, you get as exact as possible, 90 degrees, so that the surface of the cut is 90 degrees to the top surface of the wood. Now you'll notice there's a little scale here that has gradations on it in terms of degrees, and that's there because you can also loosen that. On this saw, it's just a lever. If I pull that lever up, I can rotate this back and forth and make an angled cut or a mitered cut. I can do the same thing on the table saw, actually much more accurately, because the blade is on two axes. One moves the blade up and down. The other tilts the blade to the side. So I can end up with a miter cut on the table saw as well. And again, it becomes a little less safe with the circular saw because you're messing with this surface, and it's quite doable to get it crossed, the blade crossed and caught in the wood, and it'll kick it back. So the differences: if you want to take the saw to the work, use a circular saw. If you want to bring the work to the saw, use a table saw. Advantages of the table saw: it's much more accurate. Advantage of the circular saw is it's very portable.
What about cross-cut, rip cut?
We can do rip cuts and cross cuts on either one of these. Rip cuts are...
Start over and just say another consideration.
Another consideration is rip cuts versus cross cuts. Now on a table saw, I've got this fence, and I can take a relatively narrow piece of wood and bring it up here against the blade and push it through this way, doing a rip cut. Or with a miter gauge, I can do a cross cut. You can do the same thing with this portable saw, but if you're trying to cut a narrow piece of wood, you do not want to try to do a rip with this handheld, because there's no good way to hold this piece of wood solidly and keep your fingers out of the way. So for a wider piece of wood, we could hold it like this, and we can do rips as well. The other thing that you can do to simulate the fence, or to duplicate the fence for this, is to clamp a piece of wood here and here, and allow the saw to go through the work like that, and you place this edge of the bottom up against that surface, and that'll keep it steady and give you a square cut.